All right, so today we are joined by Carl Davis. A little bit about Carl. Carl was born in San Diego. He served on a mission trip for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Peru for 2 years. He still speaks fluent Spanish and is working on his Portuguese. He graduated from Brigham Young University with his bachelor's and his master's degrees. He worked in education for 48 years, 19 years as a fifth grade teacher and 29 as a facilitator. He and his wife both retired from the Provo School District in 2018. They have 6 grown children, and these days, Carl spends his time almost every day working on and sharing his family history and getting to know his ancestors. So Carl, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to share my screen and start our PowerPoint if that works for everybody.
Okay, thank you. The goal today is to not only talk about family history, but to help you and me to do research better and to find places where that can be done. Also, I'm going to use my family, who was in Estes Park, as a vehicle for knowing more about not only my family, but especially about Estes Park and about doing family history itself. And I need to tell you one more thing about me. And basically what I want to tell you is if I can do family history, I think anybody can. As a child growing up, I had difficulty in school. And even when I went to BYU, I had difficulty. And it wasn't till I was in my 40s and sitting in a faculty meeting and a psychologist from the Provo School District came in and started talking to us about ADHD and ADD children. And as she talked, I listened and I said, that's me. And no wonder I couldn't remember. No wonder I couldn't stay focused. No wonder my desk was always the messiest one in the classroom. And it carries over to my family history, and my organizational skills are still minimal at best, even though I've been around for 75 years. So just beginning with that, if you have even a little bit of organization, you're going to be starting off a lot better than I have. So first of all, I'd like to start with the first slide. Let's see, what number are we on now? Okay, you want to go to the next one, Michaela?
There we go.
All right, this is my family, my great-grandmother and grandfather, George and Mary Lucretia Wagner. And Mary Lucretia on the right is also known as Crete. That was her nickname. In this picture, all of those people came to Estes Park except 2, the boy on the left, Claude, and the girl in the middle, Pauline Isabelle, and we'll talk to you about them later. The young lady standing to the left is my grandmother, Grace Irene. To her right is Leon, Claude, the little boy, George, Pauline, Beth. She's the youngest of the children when this picture was taken in 1895 in Norman, Oklahoma. And then my grandmother, Crete. They were actually in the land rush in Oklahoma in 1893 and settled a 160-acre farm in just east of them in Stella, which is part of Norman. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Oh, any questions about anything there or comments?
Yeah, if anybody has
We'd
any
like you to
questions,
participate. Yeah,
yeah, if anybody has any questions, just kind of dive in.
okay. All right. So this lady standing here is my grandmother a few years later, I think 15 years later in 1901. And this is their wedding picture. And that's my grandfather sitting. I find it really rare that they're interesting that the men sat and the women stood in a lot of these pictures back in those days. Anyway, that's them. And off to the left is a census for Estes Park in 1910. And my grandmother and grandfather are the top family, where it says Weislogel, Julius, and Irene. Her name was Grace Irene, and for some reason she went by Irene in the early days and Grace when she got older. I'm not certain why. But if you look down to the bottom of that family, there were two children born in Estes Park, Ruth, and she was a year old at that time, and my father was a baby. And if you look above them, Laura Lucretia, she was named after her grandmother, Mary Lucretia. And you can see, we'll see later that Laura plays a big part in what we know about Estes Park, because she did an audio recording for both me and for her son, my cousin, separately. We didn't even know the other had done it, and got a lot of information about the early family that we wouldn't have had today had it not been for them. And the part about Estes Park was really great. And Michaela, you listened to that, didn't you?
Yeah, and hopefully technology depending, we'll play a couple clips from that oral history.
Great. Okay, now I need to tell you one thing. She was 4 when she moved to Estes Park, and 6 when she left Estes Park. They were only there parts of 3 years, but basically 2 years. And so it's amazing what she can remember. And I questioned, as did my cousin, some of the things that she talked about, because we figured that she couldn't remember them. But as I've been studying and reading things that I found on information from Estes Park, she's right on most everything that she said. So it's really a tribute to her. Her memory must have been really sharp. Any questions on these pages or any comments anybody might have? How many of the listeners and viewers are from Estes Park?
Originally?
Do it. Well, no, yeah, or have family from Estes Park originally. Anybody?
I think we've got a good chunk of folks.
Okay.
My family's not from there, but we have property there that's been in our family since 1904. So.
Oh, that's before my folks came.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of it, of the big change, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about that later. All right, one of the great resources is this newspaper, The Mountaineer, that was written by J. Gordon Smith. He was the editor, and he also wrote and transcribed that newspaper a few years later after it was over. It lasted just during 1908. And this is the very first paper, volume 1, number 1. And if you look on the right-hand side, here is an article about my great grandparents opening a store in Estes Park. And I can't read the right-hand side, but I'll try to read the small one. The many friends of George W. Wagner, and that means everybody in the park. Oh, the park. Let me talk about that. How many of you know that Estes Park was originally called the park? And it was that way for a few years, but then they realized that there was Horseshoe Park and Moraine Park. And then when the Rocky Mountain National Park was created, it became very confusing. And so it was kind of dropped. And if you want to read about that, Michaela has an article or a transcribed series of newspaper editions from Berthoud, called the Estes Trail. And it was written in Berthoud by a man, I can't remember, Young, I think was his last name. Anyway, maybe Gordon Young, I don't remember. And so there's also information from surrounding newspapers that talk about things that happened in the park at that time. Okay, so anyway, go back to us. To the formal, I can't read it. Could you change the place where the pictures are on this to another side, Michaela?
Oh yeah, I think if you just kind of hover over, you can drag.
Oh, I can do that.
Drag folks around. Yeah.
Oh, I can do it. Okay, okay. Formal summer opening of this popular confectionery and ice cream parlor Saturday. And at George's expense, partook of delicious ice cream and refreshing drinks. The place was crowded all afternoon and evening, and George, was assisted by his charming wife, did the honors right royally. Mr. Wagner's place has been greatly improved since last season. Okay, this gave me a clue. I thought he built the place, but evidently he bought it from somebody else because there had been another group there the previous season. And so the front of the store contains a soda fountain, candy cases, cigar case. So it was a confectionery and for candies and tobacco products. Back of this, cut off by decorative grill work, is the ice cream parlor. And we'll show you a picture of this inside of this. Thankfully, we have this picture. This room is extremely fitted up and is inviting as one could wish. The floor is covered with a heavy carpet of pleasing color, harmonizing with the walls. The chairs and tables are of the best, and the whole effect is of ease and comfort, and elegance. My fifth grade reading there. Anyway, so here you have a picture and a whole lot of information telling us about this specific person in town, and this whole Mountaineer is filled with articles just like this. Okay, here we have a picture of the inside. The grill work back there at the back is the part that George did. He built the cases. This is the carpet. So Creed is at the left, George in the middle, and Harriet, the youngest of the children, the youngest of the children in Estes Park. And she's about 9, I believe, at this time. And so isn't that a great picture? I mean, it just gives so much detail, and it tells this great story. And knowing a little bit of the background with those in combination gives us a whole lot of information about our ancestors. And one of the things I'm going to talk about with you is the importance of collecting, digitizing, and sharing memories. And an example of this importance of sharing is my cousin, who I did family history with on my dad's side, had hundreds of pictures and all kinds of memorabilia. And one day his house burnt down and he lost everything, completely everything. And so we both vowed, after he told me that story, to collect and share. And we got onto Ancestry and started sharing with people on Ancestry. And we took our repertoire of about 35 or 40 items, and we turned it into well over 100 pictures and documents, censuses, and all kinds of different things, to well over 100. And now I have probably 4 times that many on both sides of my family. Of course, being ADD, I have a lot of duplicates because I forgot that I downloaded them and I do it again. But it's better to have too many rather than not enough, unless you try to find them. Okay, now this is the back of that picture, and it was written by my Aunt Laura. This was her picture, and my cousin copied both the front and the back for me. And that's another important thing to do, is make sure to check out the back of all the pictures. And my wife and I transcribed. We got everything but one word. We couldn't figure out what that one word was. And we transcribed that over here on the right-hand side. And it talks about not only where they lived at the time they got to Estes Park, but they actually built a house across the street, across Elkhorn to the north and up the hill. And so they lived. Am I taking Laura's thunder by talking about this now, Michaela, or should we wait for the? Okay. So on that first paragraph, so what he did was he built this. I thought she was talking about the confectionery shop, but it was where they lived, on the bank of the Big Thompson River behind the oh, she is talking about it, but he didn't build it. I'm sure he didn't, because it had been there before. Behind the lattice was an ice cream parlor, et cetera, et cetera. It goes down to the family lived in 5 tent houses on long platforms back of the store, wood, screens, and canvas. So they had wood bases with canvas tops and screens in the summer to let in the air. And thankfully, we have pictures of those actual tents, the river, and the confectionery shop. Have pictures of all of that. Okay, now the next paragraph, she's talking about across the street. Behind our house, there was a barn, a bear cage, and a privy. Now she goes back and talks to, in the winter, water was supplied in a hole chopped through the ice on the river. She's talking about the Big Thompson that runs right behind their property there where the confectionery shop was. And you can see, says later our house was across the road and up the hillside. So, you know, I'm pretty certain the bear cage was up the hill because of the timing, but it may have been there. And I'll tell you about the bear cage later and the significance with the history of Estes Park. Later, our house was across the road and up the hillside. Dad and Grandpa built it also. Now, she says her mother, this is the part I question about Aunt Laura remembering. Mother rented a building down the road, a bakery, supplied bread, couldn't remember that, couldn't read that word, donuts, fancy rolls, etc. Also did most of the candy making. Grandpa was also the game warden. I had no clue. And I'm not sure about that one either. He also built several large hotels and in town and mountains. Now, down at the bottom, it says Stanley, Huff, and Antlers. So I doubt if he built the Stanley Hotel. He probably was a builder there. He may have built another one. And he probably, the Elkhorn, I didn't know there was a hotel called the Antlers. Did you know about that, Michaela?
I'm wondering if they're referring to the Elkhorn, and that was kind of like a slang term for that particular establishment.
That's what I thought also.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Any questions or comments on what we've talked about here? Okay. I'll be silent for a little while to give you a chance if you think of something. Okay, want to go to the next slide, Michaela? All right, this picture, have you ever seen this before you saw it on here, Michaela?
Not that I can think of, huh?
Okay, then I'm pretty certain this is from our family. And I'm fairly certain that that's my grandpa, great grandpa, George, standing in the middle there. And this is one that's been colorized also. And so I look at this and I think, look at the boards over there, and you've got to cut every one of those off with a handsaw. How long would that take? And you know, the workmanship in those days was wonderful also. And you think about, you just look at that building and think of power tools, air tools, whatever, how long that would take. How long did it take them in those days? And so this is just a great shot. And I questioned about him being a building contractor also, but in the newspaper, it talks about, my ADD is showing up again. I'm sorry. It shows up as him being the contractor for one of the buildings in town. And so he did do that. And I'm certain that he was heavily involved. When he first came to Estes Park, let me regress a little bit. It was 1908 and it was January, and he went to a town meeting, and he and another fellow were there talking about putting phone lines in from Drake. And that's as far as the phone lines went at that time, from Drake to Estes Park. And my mind was turning when I was reading that and thinking, okay, he's been building all his life, probably a building contractor. He sees the boom that's going on in this town and says, I'm going there. He was living in Loveland at the time. And they moved to Loveland in about 1900 and then on later. Okay, these are three separate, the first left is an article out of the Mountaineer. The third paragraph up, it talks about George Wagner and others working on the Danville Dunraven laundry. And so they were building that. With his name being first, he was probably the contractor. Doesn't say that, but you can assume. Then this is the transcribed Mountaineer for the whole season. whole year that The Mountaineer was being published. And it just all runs together. But in it, J. Gordon Smith, the editor, has added little quips in there and put them in parentheses so that you know it's him speaking. And he's trying to clarify by what he remembered. And then I went in and took out of that. First of all, I divided it into sections, and then I put it in a section or a separate paper for myself, just those articles that talks about my family. So those are on the right. Okay. And so you have that, Michaela has that and can share that with you if you'd like to go through it.
Yeah, so now I'm going to play just a really quick, yeah, I'll play a quick clip or two from Laura's oral history that Carl mentioned, and she talks about like how she got up to Estes Park. Obviously, here's her quote from that. And then just kind of a short description of the village. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then hopefully you all can hear this. I have a speaker system set up, so let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Okay, so let me find my clip. Oops. Sorry, stay with me, guys, just a sec. Okay. All right, so here we go. If you can't hear it, like wave or something, and I'll start it over, okay?
I guess it was in Surrey, and met us down there, and we stayed there in Denver for a day or two, and then he drove us on up to Estes Park. And I thought it was so long in those days. It was just a narrow dirt road high up on, cut into the side of the mountain, follow the Big Thompson River all the way. And I don't remember how far it was or how far it is. Still just as far. But we got up to Estes Park, and I don't know, it was in the fall. And then we lived in Grandpa had a store up there, a candy store and tobacco and ice cream that he sold. And they had tent houses built out in the back that the family lived in. I think there were 4 or 5 tent houses. There was a long platform built out there, and then these tent houses, they were wood part way up, and then screen and canvas the top and the top sides. And Mother and George and Bill and I were allotted to one at the second tent back from the store. And I remember that every morning when I'd wake up, I'd have a nosebleed. I guess it was the high altitude that did it. So I finally learned that if I'd slide out of bed real careful and slide down to the floor, not make any sudden movements, that I could escape having a nosebleed, maybe. But when I'd stand up, then it would usually start. But every morning for a long, long time, I had that happen to me. Well, in January, of course, there was heavy snow on the ground there too. And I remember Mother slipping and falling out on the platform, going into the tent house up into the store. The store had a big, long, the first part of it, the store part, big, long room. And then there was a smaller room behind it that was open grill work between the store. That was the ice cream parlor.
All right, so that was her first. Could you guys hear that okay? Yeah, okay. So that was kind of,
that was good.
Her first recollections of coming to Estes Park. And clearly she was dealing with some maybe elevation issues coming up. And then the next clip I'm going to play is her kind of description of town and what was going on. So let me slide over to that. Just bear with me just a sec. Does anybody have any questions while I'm finding this? No, we're good? Okay. Okay, here we go again.
She tossed as soon as the teacher's back was turned, she tossed the apple behind the piano. The teacher turned around and asked her what happened to the apple. And she'd say, went down the little red lane. That boy, Rita, was really a caution. It's Mr. Joe Ryan, so handsome, tall, and fine, 6'4" and just straight a little more. Poor guy. We used to, every time we'd see him on the streets, we'd sing that to him. I'm ashamed of it now. Another thing we used to do, let's see, what was it? Oh. Besides having the store up there, he was a building contractor from way, way back. And he built the Stanley Hotel that was back up in the hills out of the village quite a ways. Mr. Stanley was the man that invented the Stanley steamers. And he had this beautiful big hotel. Well, I think Grandpa also built the Antlers Hotel up there too, up in the hills. And in the village, there was the Huff Hotel, but he didn't build that one. I think that was already there. The village wasn't too big. There was the Huff Hotel and Sayers store. That was the grocery store and dry goods. And there was a barber shop and a druggist and Grandpa's confectionery. And I guess that was the extent. Oh, and there must have been a post office. I don't remember it, but there must have been. And there was a garage. And that was the extent of the village.
So she mentioned Sayers Farm, which I believe is Sam's Service, which was kind of the general merchandise store at the time. So you can kind of see some of that discrepancy in her memories as a young child, where she gets kind of close to the name, but her description is kind of right on.
It is.
All right, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen if everybody wants to hang with me just a sec. All right.
Okay. So here is a picture on the left in black and white and on the right colorized. And this is of Estes Park. You can see the arrow pointing down to the candy kitchen. When I got the very first picture, and since then I've somehow made it so it's not as clear, but anyway, you could actually read where it said candy kitchen, and you could read where it said bakery over there. And then that arrow pointing to what I thought was the Hupp Hotel. Which hotel did you say that was, Michaela?
So in her description, she describes that building as the Hupp Hotel, but that at the time probably would have been the Manford Hotel that later gets bought by the same folks, and Josephine Hupp, who has the Hupp Hotel, which is just across the street. And if you see in the right-hand picture, it's got like a dark brown roof. So that would be the roof of the Hupp Hotel. And then what's labeled as the Hupp Hotel in this picture from her description is probably the Manford Hotel that gets bought by the Hupps later.
Okay. And then you can see the tents out back. She described that there were 5 of them. And in the next picture, we'll show you, it will show you a better shot of the river there. But look at Elkhorn then and now, and quite a change. Look at the mountains around and how blank they are. Go ahead, you can move. Go ahead, Michaela. Move me along so I don't take too long.
No, we'll keep an eye on the time.
Okay, so go ahead and go to the next one then.
Yeah, so there you can
Okay.
see. Yeah.
All right, so now this picture, I guess later on it'll show the other one. Anyway, this picture is taken looking west instead of east. And so that Manford Hotel is the white one there on the corner. And somewhere up on that hill behind that, they built a home And that's where their home was after they lived in the tents for a season. And I'm not sure if they lived there in the winters or not. I don't know that. But anyway, this is just looking at it from another angle. And that is moraine that crosses there in right next to that hotel. It goes on the east side of the Hupp Hotel and on the west side of the Manford Hotel. Is that right, Michaela?
Yeah, so I think it's on the left and right kind of gal. So I think it's on the left. You'll see Manford Avenue like going left, and then the one that kind of snakes up the hill, I believe, is Bighorn Drive now.
Oh, okay. Was that moraine before?
I don't think so. I think Moraine just starts and goes to the left.
Okay.
Somebody correct me. Also, locals. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, help. Okay, that's what I get by assuming. Anyway, okay, so anyway, right there, just beyond that to the left where that road goes by, there's a bridge going over the Big Thompson. But anyway, look at that mountainside and the lack of homes and roads and everything. It looks kind of pristine at this point, doesn't it? Any comments from those who know Estes Park well?
Oh, Chris is raising a
Okay.
hand. Hold on just a sec, Chris.
All
I
right,
was just gonna say that's the Fall River.
Oh yeah, it's Fall River.
Wisconsin. And what
Oh.
years are these photos?
Oh, Fall River, not the Thompson.
No, that's the Fall River right downtown.
Oh, okay.
So, but what
So-
years were these photos taken?
1908 to 1910,
Okay,
or
I'm
no,
sure
well,
you-
I don't know, in that area.
are these your photos?
Some of them are mine. Some of them I got off of line.
Okay,
This picture is mine. The picture of the inside of the confectionery is from our family. The outside is one that I got from Estes Park, I believe, museum. And Derek Fortini was very gracious in helping me with these pictures originally. And this picture was taken shortly before the family left. And the picture shows, of course, the donkey with the three girls. The girl on the right is the little girl who was in the white dress in the original picture of the Wagner sitting on her mother's lap. The middle girl's name is Carolyn. She's about 14. Beth is about 18, probably a year younger, both of them. And Harriet would have been about 10 in that picture. And you want to move to the next picture and I'll explain well, we can watch it in color. Okay, here it is colorized. Now, doesn't that add a lot to the picture? It just kind of makes it come alive. So the two girls on the left, the middle and the left, had been sickly the whole time that they were in Estes Park. Just no energy, and anything that came along they caught and whatever. And so they took them to the doctor, I presume in Denver. And the doctor said, I know the problem. They both of them have a weak heart and they can't stand the elevation. You've got to move.
Mm.
So my grandparents came back, sold everything, and within weeks had left Estes Park. So they left in February of 11. But this is the picture, a picture of them taken shortly before they left. And the rocks in the back, I think, are near where their home was. Does anybody recognize that rock formation by any chance? I think it's on the north side of Elkhorn, because that's where their home would have been. And I don't know if it's to the east of where the confectionery shop was or to the west, but I think it's to the east. Okay, why don't you move on, Michaela? All right, so look at this quote up here, and this is from the newspaper in Bethel, the
Berthoud.
Estes Trail. What is it?
Berthoud.
Say it again.
Berthoud.
Berthoud, thank you. So this tells about Stanley, and in 1903, he came and visited for the first time, according to this newspaper, and he was really pleased with what he saw, so he purchased a whole bunch of land and then invested this $500,000 in hotels, it says, not just hotels. So there must have been more than one. And so the hotels came, but the problem was the people couldn't easily get to Estes Park from the train depot, which was down, I believe, in Loveland or somewhere in between.
Or
And
Lion.
so Lyons, did it go to clear to Lyons? That's Drake, isn't it? Or close to that?
No. No,
Okay.
it's south, but that's okay. Keep going.
Okay, so it's Lyons, great. And so that's when he decided he was going to build the steamers. And so the first steamers were these that they brought people in were these 11 passenger and a driver steamers, and they call them mountain wagons. And the one which would have been the one in the back, the one in the front looks like it's a truck, a pickup truck steamer. And then they had a later version also. But the steamers were what made the real change in the growth in Estes Park. People being able to have access to get there. Okay, here you have, we believe this is Thompson Canyon. It looks what it might have looked like, but who knows? And there's a mountain wagon in the back. You can see it has 4 rows. So maybe it's an 11 passengers because it looks like there's, or 11 person. There's 2, then 3. Well, there may have been 11 or 12. I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, so that was the mountain wagon. And then this one looks like it has a radiator cap on it. So it may not even be a steamer. I'm not certain. Does anyone know? Anyone familiar with the steamers? Silence. Okay. So anyway, this picture in black and white isn't near as interesting as it is in color. But these steamers made the whole difference in how people got to and back from Estes Park to where they're going. Okay, now my aunt also, and Michaela, you probably heard this, said that when they left Estes Park, she said they came in a horse and wagon or horse and buggy, one of the two, and left in a Stanley steamer. So this picture is a picture taken in LA, and these are my father in my grandmother's arms, Crete's arms. That's Harriet standing there, which would have been their aunt. And these are the other 4 siblings that were alive at that time. My grandparents had one more child after my father. So on the far left, sitting, that's Laura. That's what she looked like when she was 6 or 7, something like that. The next one is George. He's right to her left. And behind is Bill. He's the oldest of the family. And then Ruth sitting there to the right. She was also born in Estes Park. She was the other one born there. And so quite a quick change from altitude, 8,700 feet, 8,500 feet to almost sea level. But you really have to take your hat off to my great grandparents who immediately left. Okay, these are pictures of my father and siblings afterwards. The picture on the left, it's a long story, which I'm not going to go through, but due to my grandfather's alcoholism, mother finally left him, and these children wound up in an orphanage in Kansas, Winfield, Kansas. It was a Lutheran orphanage where they had to speak German. And this picture was taken. This is the first picture taken. They smiled in this picture, and they had to take another one, and they had to frown in the second one. Anyway, this picture was taken to advertise them to be put up for adoption. Well, my grandmother found out about it. She came in, she paid the ransom to get them out. And it was actually paid what they were owed, because my grandfather contracted with them to pay $8 a month for the 4 of them to live there while he was off working, but he never had any money to pay them with. And the picture on the right is a few years later. That's the baby of the family, Mariana, and my dad on the left and George on the right. And they just look as mischievous as they can be. And I can understand where I come from. Anyway, so this is the part that I think you've probably all been waiting for. Conducting genealogical research. And here I would really appreciate your input, because we all look at things differently. I talked to Patty about this, and I think hopefully, Patty, we're in agreement with what I wrote. She suggested, which I already had done myself too, is if you want to start, you start with what you know, and that's yourself. And you start simply, and just do it simply. You can make an outline of your life or whatever, but somehow write the story of you and do your personal history up until this point in your life. I don't think you can do the rest of your life yet. Let me tell you a quick little story. I was asked to teach a class on writing a personal history. I had only done a journal when I was a missionary, not before or after. And I had no idea. I told the person who asked me, I can't remember anything. And he said, oh, you'll figure it out. So I went home and I thought, what do I remember? I remembered my dog named Magoo. And so I started writing about Magoo. And while I was writing, I remembered the first memory I could remember about laying on a bed with my mom and listening to the radio, taking an afternoon nap, and then it went on and on. I came up with a 1.5 page single space of just ideas about what I could write about in one afternoon. It was over 100 different things. And so once you start, your mind will help you remember other things. And then after that, I would be talking to somebody and, oh yeah. And then I would go and write that down. I had everything in typewritten on a computer, and then I would just write it down in ink off to the side, another idea. And so I'm still working on those. But that was starting with me. And then 4-generation worksheet. That's, you start with you, 2nd generation, parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. That's 15 people in all. You just write down birth date, marriage, death, whatever you can get down. So I did that in 1979. And I never did another bit of significant writing other than some recordings that I did of anything until 2004, when I went to Patty and Charlie's Family History Museum. Somebody have a comment? Say that again.
Oh, I can't hear anyone. I don't hear anyone, Carl.
Okay, all right. So in 79, I stopped. And in 2004, I went to the Family History Center that Patty and Charlie were and are directors. And I sat down next to Charlie. He started. Well, I'm hearing feedback from me. I can't turn my mic off. Anyway, so since then, I've tried to do family history every day that I could. And I finally retired in 2018. And since then, I've been doing it just about all that I could. So number 3, next thing, share work with others in the family. Put it on the websites, everything you can put. The more you give, the more you receive. And that lesson of my cousin, of his house burning down, once it's out there, it's never going to be lost. It will just, more and more and more people will get those things. And so that's important to do. And also, while you're collecting names and dates and those kinds of things, collect memories too, because you've learned about my family. You know more about it than a lot of my relatives do, because they haven't taken the opportunity to find out. So collect them. And then digitize everything you can and store it in an orderly way. I'm speaking to me when I say that. And I've got to get help. Maybe I'll go talk to Patty and see if she can help me. Anyway, and then share again. Okay, go ahead. This next picture, I told you I could go and tell you about every one of these people, but I'm only going to tell you about 2. First, on the picture on the right, Claude, my dad's middle name he's named after him. Claude, when he was old enough to leave home, he did, and he went around the world. He wound up in Fairbanks, Alaska, became a gold miner, struck it rich, filthy rich, sent a telegram home that he had struck it rich, and they never heard from him again. Quick story, but that's his life. Pauline Isabelle, in the middle, the little girl in the brown dress. I've asked Michaela to read her obituary. I don't know if I could get through it or not.
Okay, so this is her obit that Carl was able to find, and it's very beautifully written. So I will go through it. It's just a couple of paragraphs. Pauline Isabelle Wagner, daughter of G.W. and Mary L. Wagner, was born December 12th, 1892, died March 16th, 1899, aged 7 years, 4 months, and 2 days. This is a brief record of this sweet little girl, but her record is in heaven now. Her farewell words will linger with her parents and relatives as a rich legacy and as a sweet memento of a beautiful life. She said to her father, "Papa, I am dying. Meet me in heaven." She spoke of her departure to her mother and all the family and sent farewell messages to her relatives that were not present. Kissed all goodbye and said, "I'm going to live with the angels." She was conscious to the last. Thus faded the beautiful flower ere it had become a full-blown rose. We say to the parents, be faithful and true to God, and you will meet little Belle in the sweet by and by. We will reach our home in heaven by and by, where it shows that we love will never say goodbye.
Isn't that wonderful? Okay, have you ever walked into a dark room, no light at all? Somebody lights a match. How big is that match? More matches, candles, a flashlight, turn the light on. Everything that you add brings clarity and understanding to those people who we love, our ancestors. And so memories are so important. Okay, doing research. There are several paid places you can go, and they're wonderful. My Heritage is where I did these colorized pictures. But there are some free places you go, and one of those is a free website called preservingtime.org. And Patty is the creator and the manager of that site. And Patty is here, and I've asked her if she would talk to that and take questions and help you understand the things that you can do and find and help you can get free on that website. And then the second one is www.familysearch.org. And it's an official site of the church that I belong to. But also you can become a free member, and you don't have to be a member of the church to be a member of Family Search. And you can have all the same privileges of research on that site as a member has. And so it's a wonderful resource. And so Patty, I'll turn the time over to you, and please ask questions and get help if you'd like it. Are you there?
Oh, let me see, Patty. There we go.
Okay, got the unmute. Okay, for Carl to compare my website to Family Search almost makes me laugh. But anyway, Family Search is the premier location for records. So, and let me back up a little bit so I don't get feedback. Okay, but preserving time for me was, I answered so many questions that I developed the site to help people have a place to get started and not be overwhelmed by the volume of all of the other sites. So if you go to the home page, you'll see that on the home page is just a menu tree of the things that I have up. There's handouts from a lot of our classes. Most of them are pretty basic classes on how to interview, how to organize, just the how-tos of family history. The next tab is called Website Project, and it is the best of the websites out there. And it's all categorized so that you can find things by a state or by what it is that you want to do. Section of the site's fairly large, but broken into really small pieces. In there, you'll find Pikes Peak Public Library and some of those kind of things that I've found that have helped me a lot. Anyway, so Website Project, there's a section for our center, but under that section is a lot of basics. There's a computer basics, some computer basic sites if you even need that. There's handouts from, we hold a family history fair every year, well, except this year. We hold a family history fair. We usually get 500 people, but we have teachers from the area, and handouts for the last several years are available there. We have some fairly well-known people in genealogy that are willing to teach for us. So there's handouts there. There's a section on photos and stories. Anyway, just I've tried to break it down into different sections and pull just the best of what's out there on beyond. Obviously, Family Search has so many records, and the Ancestry and MyHeritage, all of those have so many records, but they're more tree-based, and my site's a little more information-based and how-tos on how to do. And my email, if you have a really burning question, it's really easy. It's preservingtime.org@gmail.com. And I'm happy to help if I can, but I'm more on, I know more about organization than I do about genealogy, although I've done a lot of genealogy, but I only know the areas where my family's from. So anyway, good luck to anybody. Colorado, if you're in the right area of Colorado, you're lucky. If you're in the wrong area of Colorado, I'm sorry, because some areas are really ornery about sharing their records and some are really, really good. So good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Patty. These 2 pages are examples from her website that we were just at, and also this one on the left. The one on the right is an example of a family search help page. And Patty is correct. I wasn't trying to compare them. I'm just saying they're both great places. and if you want to do research, as she says, Family Search is absolutely free and as good as any of the other sites. However, you can't colorize pictures on it. So there are some things you can't do, but most everything. And this page is Michaela's, and she can speak to this page. And go ahead, Michaela.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add kind of onto Carl's list of resources that these are some of the things that I use in my job as a museum professional when I'm researching, and just again, like researching my own family, but then also researching anything for upcoming exhibits or programs or things like that. These are some of the sources I use. I put Google on there. Don't forget about Google. Google yourself. It's a wonderful place to start. I think a lot of people overlook it because it's kind of so obvious. But Google yourself and kind of just see what happens. It might kind of give you some ideas to start that ball rolling. Again, as a museum professional, I need to point out, don't forget about your local museums. We would love to help you. A lot of museum collections are moving online if they're not already there. So you can find our collection online on our website, as well as locally our digitized newspapers, which I'm sure many of you are aware that we have up until 1968, which is keyword searchable. And we are certainly not the only community that does that. So make sure to check in your own community to see if those resources are available, especially digitally now when researching is kind of an at-home adventure. But of course, going to your local library and things like that is really helpful as well. There's some bigger resources out there, including the National Genealogical Society and the National Archives, as well as census records. And on those bigger sites, including the Smithsonian, they break it down for you. There's some really great step-by-step instructions on how to really just start your search. So I wanted to throw out those resources in addition to Carl's. So I think that's what we've got. Carl, if you want to wrap anything up.
I just want to say that through this research that I've done about my ancestors, I have come to personally know many of them because of the small things that match that's lit in the darkened room. When you learn one thing about them, you want to know more. And as you gain more, you come to know them. I know some of their personalities. I understand myself better because of knowing them. I look at that mischievous picture of my father and his brother, and I understand my brother and me. So enjoy. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I've learned much preparing for this and presenting.
All right,
And
we
so
have,
I thank you, and I thank Patty and Michaela for all that you've done to help, and thank all of you for attending. I really appreciate it.
yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Patty, thanks for being here. We have a question from David.
Please.
David, I think you're muted. There we go.
Francis, Dave's wife.
Oh, hi, Francis.
So the question I've got is a little bit opposite of from where Carl and Patty are coming from. I have probably 2 book boxes full of papers pertaining to family history, things like newspaper clippings, programs of initiation into an organization, and all sorts of stuff like that. So the question is, once I've digitized this and put together the ancestor story, if you want to call it that, what do I do with the paper? Do I have to keep the paper? It seems heretical to throw it away. What would be your recommendation?
I would ask if there are family members who want it, if you don't want it. Keep it in the family. What do you think, Patty?
I would see if family are interested. Depending on what you have, I have boxes and boxes from family. Some of mine have historical value, and those should go to a museum or somewhere that could preserve them for all time type thing. There's no reason to store it if you don't have the identification and the stories with it. It will just end up in a garbage. Preservation, archiving is more my background, and I don't know, that's a really, really common question from people. And typically, if you put it out there that you have stuff, somehow whoever might want it will somehow get word and find you. I've heard that story repeatedly, but just make sure that it's preserved digitally in case the family puts it in the dumpster. So
Yeah, Francis, I would kind of echo that. If you aren't looking to keep it yourself, like you have those digital copies already, if you're going through and a lot of that material is like from Seattle or wherever, you might look into like maybe someone, like there might be a local museum in Seattle or something like that to donate to like the local library or the local museum or genealogical research folks who also might be interested in that material.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, you can always email me and I can get questions to Patty or Carl for sure. If you don't want to ask over Zoom, please shoot me an email and we'll see what we can do for you. I will just say that our next museum program here happening on Zoom is going to be with Bob, who I think is in the audience. Bob Levitt is going to be talking about McLaughlin Ranch Friday, April 9th, back here on Zoom. And that link can be found on our website under the Programs and Events tab. So I think if nobody has any questions, we'll close this down. But thank you all so much for joining us. Carl and Patty, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your research and your stories with us. And we'll see you next time, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.